Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone in between, I'm OverHugs, and I'd like to welcome you back to Building Bread. Thanks for choosing to join us on the adventure today. While we have definitely made some progress against our battle with the chest monster, it has not yet fully been vanquished. But we have made a lot of other progress since last episode, so why don't we hop through the Nether and check out our new and exciting Nether Hub design. And now here is our new Nether Hub. I wanted to make sure that you knew without a doubt that you were in the Nether, so we used very fiery colors for the floor, and almost all of it are materials here that you would find in the Nether itself, with the exception of these blue wool blocks, just because I wanted more of a gradient. But it has a nice soul sand path so that we can run fast if we're not flying for some reason, and if we're going through on a recovery of gear, we have a regular path here as well, so that we won't be slowed down if we don't have soul speed on our boots. I like the respawn anchors on the side here because they're a great example of circles, which you don't really get to see very often in Minecraft. Almost everything is square and textured, so I really liked the thought of doing it here. It's also very well lit up. If we come around here to a section that isn't complete yet, you can see that we've used the sea lanterns to bracket the entire path, so this should make this entire area totally spawn-proof. As well as you can completely fly through it. It goes on wide enough to where there won't be a problem and you can make the corners if you choose to. We do still have a little bit more to do, just a touch, but it's a really good start to progress, and we designed this live on stream if you want to go back and watch that to see the thought process. But that's not today's project. Today's project starts in about as opposite of a place as you can get from the Nether, and that would be underwater. Today we're going to be spending a great deal of our time down here underwater. And while you certainly can use water-breathing potions, and you've seen us do this in the past, especially when we were doing the Guardian farm, I don't want to have to do that today. I don't want to have to continuously go through and worry about my potions, and worry about if I can see anything in this very, very dark area, although those light rays are something fantastic to see. I like those a lot. So in order to not have to do that, we're going to build a conduit. Our conduit journey starts here, flying over the ocean. In order to be able to find the items that we need for a conduit, we first need to find a shipwreck. And I found one off camera right around here. Shipwrecks, which are not the easiest thing to see, especially when you have shaders on, happen underwater all over the world. And some of them are very easy to find where they can be sticking out of the water and you'll just see it flying over. Some of them, like this one that we're coming up on, are much lower in the world and much more difficult to find, especially if you're running a shader. And here it is. All of these shipwrecks have a number of chests within them, and you can find these by generally going in and exploring. This one is a very, broken up shipwreck. A lot of them are much more complete than this one, where you actually have to go into the ship in order to find the chests. But this one is just sitting right here outside. And when we open it, we find the buried treasure map, which is the goal of what we wanted to find in the shipwreck. We'll take the paper, because you can always use it. And there's usually multiple chests that have good treasure. Like here's another one here. Nothing good. That wouldn't be bad if we were first starting off. And they can have 2 to 3 chests. This one seems to only have 2. So this is a buried treasure map. And this shows you, with the typical X marks the spot, exactly where the treasure is. The dot represents the player, and it will be the size of larger or smaller, depending on how close you are. We're very lucky that this map is right where we are, so it's very close, as you can see by part of the blue already being filled in, so we can just fly down this way and try and find where X marks the spot. And this will be nice and easy and quick for us, which is great. So it appears that it is right over on this island, right about here. And down we dig. Treasure maps are always found around these diggable blocks, whether it be sand or gravel or something like that. So if you hit stone or sandstone, you've gone too far. They often are not the easiest things to find, and you will quite often find that you have to dig up the whole area in order to find the chest itself. But we persevere, after all. And here we go. This one took quite a bit of digging, but we finally discovered the chest, and we can open it and find what we were looking for, which is the heart of the sea. Every treasure chest will have one of these, and there's a decent amount of other stuff, but not a tremendous amount that we need, so we'll just put it back. And let's get out of here from underwater again before we drown. The second part of what we need in order to make a conduit is a Nautilus Shell, and these generally come from two sources, either the Wandering Trader or Drown. And we're here at our slime farm because, one, it's lit up and you can actually see what's going on at night underwater, and two, because we had a great deal of Drown that were here in the first place when we were building this slime farm. This is where we actually got our first trident of the series, if you remember from that episode. But right now I'm trying to find at least one Drown, and I'm not having a lot of success, so we may have to relocate to a different area. And hilariously, here's a Drown with a trident. Let's see if we get another one, which would be awesome. Did we? No. Now that it's night again, in order to have a bit of a better viewing experience for you, I went and made some potions of night vision. And when we take one of these, we can just immediately see that it makes the water look a lot easier to see down through, which is great. So now we can actually go through here and search for our drowned without having it be a terrible, muddy experience. And if you want to know how to brew all these potions, well, that's another episode. Tune in soon. Close but no cigar. You have a fishing pole, but we don't want a fishing pole. 1 billion drowned later. And this is what it finally looks like when we find a drown that has a Nautilus shell. So they will be showing it to you, letting you know that if you kill them, you can loot it. So let's go ahead and do that and get our Nautilus shell. Now, normally we would need 9 more of these, but thankfully for us in this series, this was just to show you how you get them. I already have plenty. So now that we have our Heart of the Sea and our Nautilus shells, we can make ourselves a conduit. And the conduit is what we need in order to have, basically, infinite water breathing as well as underwater vision. Now that we have our conduit, we have to activate it. And the way that you do that is by building up this structure, where you start by making a plus that has 3 blocks of prismarine on each side. On the second level, you place down your conduit. Build a square, go up 1 more block in the section where the plus corners are, and then create yourself another plus up here, thereby completing the conduit shape, which should fully empower it. And now, as you see, we have a fully powered conduit. We now have conduit power, which means that we can stay underwater essentially forever, and it does give us a little bit of additional visibility. Cool thing, if you get really close to the conduit, you can hear the heartbeat. So the heart of the sea within the conduit itself is beating and giving you that nice ambiance. One thing to note is that if you have a block underneath the conduit like this, it will deactivate. So if you're ever wondering why your conduit doesn't work, please note that it has to be on the square level and there can't be anything beneath it. As you'll see, it reactivates as soon as we remove it. That frequently bites me. But we can now stay underwater forever while we're doing our work. Conduit power is very similar to a beacon, where it lasts basically forever because it's being refreshed as long as you're close to it. And much like a beacon, it has a limited range, where if we continue to swim away, eventually the conduit power will fall off and it will stop refreshing, as we can see here. We're now far enough away where we don't have the effect of conduit power. We will lose the ability, as we now have. So now we will begin to lose bubbles once again, and as we go back and refresh it, we will pick the conduit power back up again. So make sure that you're careful about where you place your conduits for when you're going to be working underwater. So now that we've got this area all ready, let's get into today's project, which is going to be a kelp farm. So as always, it's better to explain it after we've got it. So let's take a super speed potion and get into a time lapse. All right, we have phase 1 of our kelp farm. There's a bit more that I'm going to do to this, but this episode's already getting kind of long, so why don't we go through and explain the farm and wrap it up. This is a little bit unique in that it is both a passive and an active farm, and because of the conduit and the fact that half of it's underwater, we can go through and I don't actually have to be on the camera account. How nice. If you didn't see it in the time lapse, we also found a mine shaft down here, which we'll definitely be exploring. Like, that made me happy to find that by mistake. So the way that this works is down here, we have a number of dispensers that are filled with bone meal. There's a loading system over here where bone meal is dispensed from up top and can be started and stopped with a lever up there, and it falls down here into these hoppers, where it fills up this chest, which then fills the hopper minecart below. And then we have a standard track and hopper loading system, which loads the chests below and ultimately loads into these dispensers. Every time that you dispense bone meal onto kelp, it will grow 1 block. And what happens is as this grows up and up and up and up and up here, there are observers. And it will detect whenever any of these rows breaks the observer line of sight. And as soon as that happens, the pistons down here will be triggered. It will break all of the kelp all at once, and it will all float up to the surface through normal water mechanics, where it will then flow across and go into this very simple storage system. We're going to redo the storage system, and also we're going to encapsulate this farm, and it will look much better, but that's another episode. So that's the passive system. Let's show the active system. What we can do is we can load bone meal into this chest, where it loads into these dispensers themselves and goes through a very simple comparator clock, which will go through and drop it. We can stop the clock if we want to, if we wanted to cease loading by flipping the switch, but we really don't. So let's go through. The other part of this active farm is we can turn on the actual bone mealing mechanic itself. And the way that this is triggered is a pretty simple slime and redstone tower. So basically all it does is it does pistons, which push down a redstone block so that we can go through, and it tells the system all the way down there to activate. So we just don't have to go. So let's flick this on and see how productive this farm is. Once we do, this will start growing like mad, and you can see the kelp just goes nuts. And we get just a little bit of kelp will come through here, and it will continuously grow as long as there is bone meal within it. You can see that this is just going to keep growing and growing as long as we have bone meal, and quite often it will reach the top with the kelp before the previous version has even floated up to the surface to be collected. So I haven't figured out exactly how much this produces an hour, but it's so fast that realistically, we probably only have to run it for a few minutes in order to fill that double chest. As you can see, there is a lot of kelp that's coming through here. All right, I did some quick calculations on this, and it's about 200,000 kelp an hour. I think we're good with kelp pretty much forever. So now we have a ton of kelp, but why? What do we need it for at all? Well, kelp has a couple of really good uses, especially early game, but it's the late game stuff is why we're building it right now. So let's talk about what you use kelp for. We already know that whenever we put kelp in water, it turns that source into a source block, and we use this for bubble vaders all the time. However, one of the things you can also do is smelt it. So if we go through and we smelt our kelp, and let's load this up because we're going to need quite a bit of this stuff when we're done, it'll go through our super smelter, and it will go from regular kelp to dried kelp. And you'll see the dried kelp starting to come in here. Now, dried kelp, when you take enough of them, can be made into dried kelp blocks. And dried kelp blocks are a wonderful decorative block. I'm a big fan of it. Let's run up here and put one of them down. So not only does it have a really nice color and texture to it, it also has these really interesting bindings. Like, I assume that this is tied up, and that's what the block actually is. So this makes a really good both floor and ceiling tile, and honestly that's what I use it for. Let's run back here and grab a couple of them so I can show you what it looks like when there's a bunch. And again, this is one of my favorite blocks. I really like using this for building. It's got some great colors and textures within it, and now that we've got our regular shaders back on, since we're not spending most of the episode underwater, you can see exactly why I like it so much. The various combinations of green and everything just makes a really nice block. In addition, you can also use these as smelting material in your furnace, should you choose, and this may be something we switch to. The bamboo that we have is okay, but realistically it takes a whole bunch of them to even smelt a single item, whereas a kelp block is similar to a coal block in that you can smelt many items with it. And with that, we're going to call it an episode today. Once again, I wanted to thank you for choosing to spend your time on the adventure with me. I am OverHugs, and this has been Building Bread. As a reminder, I donate all of the profits I make off of this to local food banks, so if you've enjoyed or otherwise gotten something valuable out of today, I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, or tell a friend. Together, we can help people that are in need. I hope you have the most wonderful of days, and I'll see you soon.